Hey, you. Welcome back to Specialness. Yes, the long week is over. We're back. Kim is back.
I am back.
I'm Jeff.
I'm Kim.
And you're back on Specialness. And boy, we got some adventures to tell you about. But before we get into that, I haven't ever done this before. I'm going to do it right now. Look, if you're on Instagram, if you're seeing us on Facebook, you're watching us, you're following us, do us a big favor. It would really help out if you'd go over to YouTube and do the YouTube things. Like, follow, leave us a comment. It really helps us out.
Subscribe.
Subscribe.
Yes.
Thank you. Subscribe. That's very important.
It is.
Subscribe, because we're trying to help as many people as we can. So,
and if you leave a comment,
what?
It just kind of helps notify YouTube that this is information that more people need to see.
I see. And you might even get a genuine response from the star of the show, Kim herself.
That's right.
Right? Okay.
Yeah. Or Jeff. You never know.
Well, yeah. Sure.
One of us.
They want to hear from you. I'm just comic relief. Much like our life. Okay, thanks. Formal announcements over. Let's get down to talking about the week that was. I briefed everybody a little scat last week about how the week was. So let's start by just, if you could, just be melanoma. We're in good shape.
We're in good shape. Recovering from that. It'll be a little bit of time, but we're good.
Wing, right?
Yeah, a little scar, but it'll be good.
So we're over that.
We're over that. Yeah.
That's dodged. I already reported that we met with doctors for hours and they still don't know anything, so there's really no update there. Mm-hmm. Which brings us and we talked about how we got rejected on Social Security. We're going to meet with a lawyer next week. We told you that's what we'd have to do. So the great adventure begins. We'll give you an update on that later. Right? Okay. So let's get down to some basic good stuff that people can relate to and some practices they can use, because here we are. It's post-Memorial Day. It's summer. People are planning trips. We aren't, but people are. People go places. And if you have a special needs child, no matter what their age is, traveling is all part of the fun, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we went down to Houston over Memorial Day weekend to see our nephew graduate from high school.
Yes.
Houston's not far from here. It's a quick 45-minute flight up and down, basically. We were in the air long enough to get a drink.
Right. Just water.
Here's some water. And then we landed. Going down was great, right? No issues. And of course, by me saying that, we had issues coming back.
Right.
So,
and we'll get into why we fly down to Houston, because so many people are like, well, just drive. It's easier and stuff. Well, not for us and not with Cason. And we'll get into that in a little bit, but continue the story.
We will. But before we do that, before we get to the practical tips on traveling with special needs kids, I want to do an unpaid advertisement for a new place we found in Houston. And there's one here up in Frisco, just opened. Mm-hmm. For those of you who don't know about Biddy and Bose, who are radically inclusive, love their gear, right? So we did not know about Biddy and Bose. Your sister said, hey, we should go to Biddy and Bose. It's a coffee shop that everyone who works there has special needs.
Yes.
Right? And they're adults. And I can tell you that we have some hipsters that are working at the one up in Frisco. So we got there, and I really wanted to experience the full thing.
Right.
Right. You know how I am.
Yep.
Right. I'm not just going to go up and order coffee. So I get there, and I'm met by this very excited gentleman, who I said, hello. And he actually introduced himself. He held his hand and said, hello, I'm Blaze.
Right.
What's your name? And I said, well, I'm Jeff. I'm really excited to be here. And he goes, well, what can I get for you? And I said to him, Blaze, how long have you been working here? He said, I've been here for a long time. I said, what should I get? What do you recommend? You're the expert. And he said, I should get the cotton candy frappe. Yes. Now, as we found out later on.
So excited about it.
Was she excited? So I got it. I also bought this hat, and I made a deal with him. I said, I'm buying your signature drink. If I like it, you have to autograph my hat.
And when you said autograph, he just kind of looked at you like,
he's like, what does that mean? I said, well, I want you to sign my hat. He goes, oh, sure. Okay, so I get the cotton candy frappe, which I find out isn't necessarily the most popular drink, but it's his favorite drink.
Right.
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 I had a sip.
It's sweet.
It was pretty sweet. Pretty sweet.
Good.
It was good. I wasn't able to finish it.
Yeah, very sweet.
But I have to say that I enjoyed it. Blaze, we did an Instagram post with Blaze. Blaze, if you see this, thanks for doing the post. Called him out on it, tagged him. Go find it. So he signed my hat. We stayed and we got to talk with a lot of people there, spend some time with others. It was a really good time. I mean, I'm excited to go to the one in Frisco.
And it was and the environment was really neat. The way the restaurant was designed and welcoming and stuff. So big shout out to Biddy
Big fan of Biddy and Bose.
And
love the branding.
And they've got places all over.
They have 23 locations around the country.
Yes.
Started in Charlotte, I believe.
I think it was Charlotte.
And been around since, I think, 2018. I can tell you that my normal day job at Infinitude, boy, we'd love to work with Biddy and Bose. They got the same vibe as my possibilities. It's a great organization. And I don't normally say I'm looking forward to going back to Houston because
it's hot.
It's so humid there. When it's 100% humidity in Dallas and it's 100% humidity in Houston, I know the number is the same, but it doesn't feel the same.
No.
It's like being in a sauna.
Yeah.
But
go back to that location.
I will go back to that location, and I hope Blaze is still there.
Yeah.
So anyway, a little plug there for
Biddy and Bose. Yes, go check it out.
So let's talk travel tips.
Let's try. Yes.
So we have you mentioned we're going to talk about why we fly. So let's go back in the time machine to when we would drive because flying was difficult.
Yes. So when
Cason was very young,
when he was a baby, we took him. Like when we went down to San Antonio to finalize his adoption, we flew with him. He screamed. I think we mentioned that he screamed the whole way there, the whole way back, and not just the typical his ears hurting. It was just that's the beginning of Cason's issues.
Yeah,
we were like, I don't know if we can do the flying thing because he screamed the whole time. I think we flew to Florida with our big family trip once or twice with him, and he screamed the whole time. We're like, okay, we're not doing that. We're gonna drive.
We're gonna drive.
So
and we did it for several years.
Several years, we would make the trek to Florida for our
drive,
big family trip. And I'm really not sure how we survived that because during those earlier years, when Cason was really bad, it was awful. He wouldn't stay in his seat. He would throw these massive tantrums.
It lasted hours.
Yeah, screaming. And you're in the car, and poor Jackson would, we get him headphones and we had the minivan at the time that had the built-in TV screen on it, so.
Well, I remember that first year we were driving a Volvo.
Yeah, and
before we got the mini.
And we didn't get to keep that car very long, the SUV, because they were sitting too close together.
Which led to that attack.
And Cason had way too much access to Jackson, and he was not good. In a 13-hour trip, we couldn't drive straight through. We'd always have to stop. But that 13 hours wasn't 13 hours for us because we would constantly have to stop, constantly get out and put Cason back in his seat. Constantly, he would throw something in the way back out of anger, or just it was always something. So by the time we got to our destination, you and I were so beat up. We were like, we're never doing this.
And exhausted.
We were like, and we had a whole week left
of a
vacation, which wasn't a vacation.
No.
It was nice to be with our family and in Florida, but it was so much.
And this was also at the time when Cason he wasn't really sleeping through the night. If he woke up, it was time to get up.
Right.
So naturally, as I've talked about before, having a kid like Cason, everything just cost more money. When we would stay at a hotel, we had to get 2 rooms.
Right.
Because if anyone wanted to get any sleep, we had to split time with Cason
and the other,
try and keep him
those conjoined rooms.
Yeah. I mean,
yeah. It was just an ordeal. But So we did that for years of driving until one trip on our way back from Florida. And we were from the trip, we were so tired. Boys were tired. We get to somewhere in Louisiana, and Cason had been struggling pretty much the whole time, but we get to somewhere in Louisiana and he loses it and screaming, and just we couldn't calm him. And then he's like, I'm car sick, I'm feeling sick. And we're like, you're not car sick, you're fine. Well,
And this was the first time, and now that has lingered, but that was the first
time he's had this car sickness, and we can't give him Dramamine or anything because it interacts with lithium. So we can't give him anything for car sickness, but he throws up all over everything in the car, over him. It was nasty. And we're in Louisiana. And we
were very close to the Texas border.
Right, but we still had
far away.
Probably 3 to 4 hours.
Yeah.
Which doesn't seem like that much, but when you have a kid that's screaming and is throwing up constantly, it was a nightmare. And he had his headphones, and we lost the headphones somehow. I don't even know. I think he opened, when we stopped to clean him up, he threw the headphones out. And
we ended up finding him when we got home and unpacked everything, but we literally had to stop somewhere and buy a new set of headphones because he didn't have his headphones.
Yeah. But when we got home from that trip, you and I looked at each other, probably poured a glass of whiskey and downed it, and was like, we are never doing that again.
Yeah.
We're
just going to have to fly.
We're going to have to figure out.
Because it's not, I have lots of miles, so flying was not an issue.
Right. It was more
he couldn't do it.
Right. And we'll back up a little bit too. When we would drive, the good thing about when we would drive, the only good thing is we had to pack so much extra stuff for Cason, because
we had an extra giant
suitcase because when he was younger, well, not even, I mean, he wore pull-ups.
He was an
adult Depends until he was, gosh, I don't know, 18, 19.
Yeah.
But when he was younger, I mean, he had to have his particular toy, his particular DVDs, his particular whatever it was. So we'd have that. But then one suitcase was all of his meds. Then we had his CPAP equipment. Then, like I said, his toys. And it was literally one full huge suitcase was Cason.
It was just their
stuff.
I think the funniest thing we ever had to travel with, people think this is funny. It's not. No matter how I describe this, it's not funny. Stop it. At the time, well, still, a lot of the drugs that Cason has to take, medication, causes you back up.
A lot.
You get a little backed up. So when he is finally able to go, it's like they're like Adobe bricks.
That's gross.
Well, it's true, though. I mean, it's not, they don't go down the toilet real easy. So clogging of toilets is something we have routinely dealt with.
And so, wait, pause there.
Oh, boy.
So for the years we go to Florida.
Yeah.
And
we're on the beach.
And we're renting these houses. We would end up having to call a plumber.
Because they were on a sump system.
Right.
They weren't on a traditional plumbing system. So they clogged up real easy. It wasn't the force.
Yeah. And so we would have to call a plumber, and it's not like, oh, we'll be there in 30 minutes. It was always an ordeal. And again, it's costing money.
Yeah.
To have a plumber come to your vacation house. And so finally, we made the decision when
I went to Home Depot, I bought my own toilet snake, and we drove it to Florida.
Yes. So
I drove on a vacation.
Multiple summers.
With a toilet snake so I could unclog the toilet.
Right. So we had this, like in the minivan, we had all these big suitcases, and most of it was Cason stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, me and Jackson did not even, we could get all of our stuff in one, but Cason had so much stuff. And then we would have the snake in the back of our car. And anytime we would stop or whatever, and you can see it just in the window, and we would just laugh and be like, I swear, I mean, this is our life. We're having to drive for our family vacation and bring our own snake. Now, granted, when we started to fly, we weren't able to do that.
We couldn't check the snake.
Yeah, it was kind of a trade-off.
I did look into having a custom case built for it.
Yeah.
Because, if I'm going to be blowing money on things like that, I might as well protect my investment.
Right.
We ended up, your parents had a place in Florida that was, we always stayed somewhere close by. So they bought one, and
they
that way we had access to one.
Right. They did.
But I don't think this is something normal. I don't think this is something civilians have to worry about.
No, they don't. It's not even in their mindset.
It wouldn't occur. I tell you what, if you can relate to this, please leave a comment about your toilet snake, because I don't think anyone will. No, I don't think they will.
I agree. The other thing I was going to say, that one time we were driving again, and Cason was probably like 12, maybe. No, I think he was a little younger than that.
Mm-hmm.
We were literally in Dallas still.
Well, yeah, I'm not sure we'd gotten out of Plano.
No, I think we just got out of Plano. We were in Dallas, and he says, are we almost there?
I think it'd been 20 minutes.
And he was like, this is so stupid. And you and I look at each other and we say, oh my gosh, we have 13 hours of this.
Well, 12 hours and 40 minutes.
Yeah. He has no concept of time.
Right.
No understanding of where he's at.
No patience.
No patience. And so, and then he'd be asking every 5 minutes, when's lunch? When are we going to stop for lunch? And I would pack his snacks. I would pack stuff, but it aged us so much.
So I know what you're thinking, viewer. You're like, why didn't you just give him some Benadryl? Knock him out. Well, if you're just joining us, Cason takes enough Benadryl in one day to knock a civilian adult out for 2 days.
Yeah, because at that time I think he was taking that other medicine that is sedating to help him with his tics and movements, and he was taking 2 Benadryls with it.
Yep.
Later on, we dropped that blood pressure medicine and increased. But at one point he was taking 6 Benadryls a day. On top of all the other medicine he takes that's sedating.
Touch it.
And he doesn't sleep.
Nope.
He did not sleep in the car at all.
So that was not an option.
Right. And no Dramamine to help with car sickness.
We did finally discover a wristband that he could put on that, was non-medicinal.
Yeah, it like vibrates.
Yeah.
But we didn't find that until 3 years ago.
Yeah, we didn't?
No,
we didn't. Drove with that?
Nope, not until we went to Colorado. And because that was the first time, because after that whole horrible incident in the car of him getting sick and all that stuff, we said, never again are we doing this. We decided to fly everywhere. And so every summer when we would go to Florida, we would fly. And the drive from the airport to the house we were renting wasn't super far, so he could manage that. No, not even. Oh, it was like 30 minutes, 45 minutes. When we went to Colorado with our family trip, and we flew into Denver and then had to drive to Breckenridge, that was like an hour and 90 minutes an hour and 45 minutes, hour and 90 minutes.
It was just close to 2 hours.
Yeah, close to 2 hours. We were like, we can't do this. He's going to be car sick the whole time. And so I did some research and found this kind of vibrating wrist thing, and it definitely works.
Yeah.
I don't know really how, but it does. Okay, so we made the decision to fly. Now,
so tip number 1, pick a mode of transportation that works for you and works for your child, family member, and stick with it.
Yeah. So we were scared to fly with him because if you've watched any of the other episodes, you don't know what you're getting with Cason. Everything can set him off. And just the thought of, oh my gosh, we have to get him through security and all that was freaking us out.
Oh, now that, let's address that.
Well, hold on. Before we address it, we were so worried about it and what would happen with him. I had his psychiatrist write a letter stating like, these are his issues. These are things like, do not touch him. She's been seeing him for this many years, all that kind of stuff. And if there are any questions, please call me. And I was like, this is our safety net, because if anything comes up, and people are looking at us, or, Cason just literally goes off the rails, we can be like, look, here, we have something documented here. This is not just us making it up or whatever. So that did help. But we did research, and you can talk about that.
Well, the first, and this is such a great tip, because TSA doesn't even know about it.
Right. Most, yeah.
Yeah. So, TSA, that's the Security Administration at the airport. Anyone who travels much will agree with me, and I've had to travel for business on every airport. There is no uniformity.
No.
I mean, they will say you can't take, 3 ounces on the plane or whatever, can't take clippers. Every airport has a different way of doing it. That's the one thing that tends to be true, but every airport, don't take off your shoes. Take off your shoes. Put your shoes in the bin. Take off your hat.
Right.
Leave your hat on. I mean, there's no uniformity.
Yeah.
Anyway, TSA has a program called TSA Cares, which is incredibly poorly marketed.
And run.
Well, I was going to get to that.
Yeah.
Actually, it's really not that poorly run when people know what it is. Right. Yeah. So basically, there is a phone number or an email address you can send it to, and just you let them know when you're traveling. And essentially, it's for people like Cason who don't have the patience to be in lines, don't like to be touched, need to get through security a little faster. So it's kind of the same as pre-check.
Right.
But I will admit, just like the security is different at every airport, the way it runs is different at every airport. So I start with the email. I may or may not get an email. I generally get an email back. It's a form letter, though.
Mm-hmm.
It basically says, we have received your request, and you will be receiving further communication from the airport you reached out to. That generally comes as a phone call. I don't always get it.
Right.
Sometimes I get it. In good circumstances, I have gotten it. I even have a name. And when I get there, I find a TSA agent. I say, I need to speak with so-and-so. They know who they are. They go get them, and they kind of escort us through. More often, I never get a call. I find a TSA agent, and I say, yes, we have a TSA Cares appointment. And they look at me and go, what?
Yeah.
And I explain to them, the organization that you work for, the TSA, has a program for people with special needs or health concerns to help them get through security without having incidents for everyone else to have to deal with, because, our child has special needs. In a couple cases, they've been like, well, okay, I'll help you get through.
Yeah.
And they never say they know what TSA Cares are, or even admit that there's a policy or a procedure for it.
Right.
Which bothers me a little bit, because that makes me feel like I could just do that every time I travel.
Right.
But usually they're like, you mean, they use some initials like,
it was this last time, it was something like P.
It's different every time.
Yeah.
PSS this time.
Or PSS, yeah.
Which was service. Yes, was services.
Yeah, I don't know.
But they say, yeah. So they find somebody, and you get escorted through. So if you're flying, boy, it's a lifesaver, because it's bad enough if you happen to be traveling at a busy time and the lines are really long, it can be hard to get through. Now, I can also tell you that on one occasion, when we were leaving Florida, I found a TSA. We had no problem getting here from Dallas. we had 2 incidents in Florida,
Mm-hmm.
separate incidents.
Yeah.
One time I said, yeah, we have a TSA cares appointment. And the agent said, I don't know what that is. I explained it. And she said, we don't have that.
Right.
And I was like, what do you mean you don't have it? She goes, we don't do that. You're just going to have to stand in line. And I said, this may cause incidents. Well, I hope it doesn't, is what she said.
Yeah.
And I was like, now luckily that was a small Air Force.
But that's when, I think that was the time though you said, well, I need to speak with your supervisor. We ended up getting through because I think but you had to be forceful and
actually, no, we ended up waiting. We saw the line was short, so we
went through. Okay.
Now the time you're talking about, there was a double whammy. The agent didn't know about TSA cares. I asked to speak to a supervisor. I had to press it. Now, Cason had just turned 18.
Just turned 18.
Well, 4 months earlier, because we were traveling in June, weren't we?
This is our Disney.
Oh, that's right.
So he literally had just turned.
This is Orlando. So
yeah.
Literally we traveled like he wasn't 18 when we left, and he was 18 when we were returning home.
Yes.
That's right. So different Florida trip, different part of Florida. So
the Disney trip is a whole nother experience. We'll get into that.
That's another episode.
Yeah.
But returning back, this is actually 2020, about a month before the pandemic hit. So he didn't have a driver's license because he doesn't drive. So he didn't have a picture ID. But in this case, he was no longer a minor because it was 3 days after his birthday. And they weren't going to let us get on the plane. They weren't going to let us go through security. And so I had to argue with them and say, look at the guardianship papers. He has special needs. He's never driven.
We opened up the medicine.
We'll show you all this stuff. They were still fighting me on it. I think they wanted me to call someone to verify this.
They ended up, and at this point, Cason's starting to
lose it. And I said to the agent, I said, you are about to open a powder keg here.
Yeah.
This is what TSA Cares is supposed to avoid.
Right. And at this point,
we have more than enough documentation to say why he doesn't have a picture license.
Right. And they had, they'd moved us aside. So we're kind of causing a scene, and we had opened, like I said, all of these medicines, and I had pictures of him on my phone that had his name with it, like a badge that had his name on it, and that wouldn't fly because he had to have an actual.
I think we had a library card, but of course that didn't have
picture ID
or anything.
So they ended up having to call their national and talk to him.
Yeah.
They wanted to talk to Cason, and we said, look, he's not going to know. And Cason's like, I'm not talking to them. I can't talk to them. And it's like, they were like, well, if we wouldn't get on the plane. And so you and I were like, okay, let him talk. And of course they asked him, we couldn't help him. And they were asking him questions, and we could hear what they were asking him. And one was, what is the name of a school that's close to your house? And he was like, I don't know.
He looked at me and I said, tell them.
We can't help him. What is the closest store or grocery store to your house? He was like, I don't know. And I mean, they went through probably like 5 or 6 things of getting him to answer. And you and I are looking at the agents, because there's like 2 or 3 agents now with us, including the supervisor.
Oh yeah, it's starting to be a thing.
And you and I are like, told you. And then finally the person asked Cason, because they're trying to get him to, he could say his address, but they were wanting like him to be able to identify things near his house.
To prove that.
Yeah, like what was the closest park to your house? He didn't know. And finally, after like 10 questions that he didn't know the answer to, they said, well, what's the closest hospital? And because we have spent a lot of time there, he says Children's Hospital. And you and I are like, well, if that doesn't tell you something, that he didn't know a park, he didn't know school, he didn't know grocery store, didn't know anything, but he could tell you that there was a hospital close to him, close to his house. And because of that he was able to answer that question, they let us on the plane.
And that's the biggest problem we ever had. Now, we got back and we got him
passport.
Of course, right after that, the pandemic started and everything was shut down. So when we were able to get back out, we ended up going to a passport office where you can actually get a passport ID.
Right.
In
Card.
addition to the, the passport. And that's what he carries now. That's his picture ID.
Yes.
So 2 tips. If your child's under 18 and doesn't drive and is never going to drive like ours, it's once they turn 18, the day they turn 18, if you're planning on traveling, because it took 30 days or so to get the card sent to us or whatever. It took,
took a while.
It was a waiting period. You're going to want to get a picture ID because they will not let you on.
Right.
They're not kidding. And second, TSA Cares. TSAcares.gov, I think, is the website. It's a simple portal. As long as you know about it and can explain it, 95% of the time, you're going to be okay. Even if you have to explain it and train them on how to do it. If you're resolute enough about it, you can get it done.
And most of the time, if the agent you talk to doesn't understand it, if you say, can you please get your supervisor? Most of the time, the supervisors are somewhat aware about it. But
again, they'll probably call it something different.
Right.
But
like it's better than pre-check or whatever it's called when you can just walk on through or whatever, because that even has a line. But a lot of times for us with the TSA Cares, they literally open up screeners.
Well, they let us basically cut through to a closed lane.
Right.
Open it to let us through and then close it down. So we're not having to wait in any lines.
He would never get patted down. It's just way easier. It's like one agent is with you and kind of walks us through. See, it's kind of your own security agent. And a couple times
this hasn't happened, but I'm kind of surprised.
Are you jinxing us right now?
No, I'm just always prepared for this. Excuse me. I am prepared for there to be someone he doesn't like that I got to cut the line, and it's going to cause a scene. I'm prepared for that. I recommend you are too. It hasn't happened.
Yeah.
And in fact, no one's ever given us any hassle on it. And even if they didn't fully understand what TSA Cares was, other than that agent, the Florida agencies,
right,
the one at Fort Walton and the one in Orlando, every other one we've worked with has bent over backwards to get us through and ask all the right questions. And we're very respectful of Cason, and we're very helpful.
Yeah, very helpful. And and a couple times, when we were flying to Colorado, I think it was when we were going to Colorado, that was the time he, right before the trip, we had to significantly lower his lithium. And
due to a blood test that showed something was off.
Yeah. And I was like, are you kidding me? And within 24 hours of us lowering that, he was aggressive and angry. And I was like, we have to go get on a plane. And I'll never forget, we were walking through the Dallas airport and everything was making him mad. And he was screaming and yelling. And we get up to the gate because we always get to pre-board with him. And he was just, people were looking at him and he would yell, why are you looking at me? And I was really nervous about being up. That was the first time he'd been that upset before we had been on a plane. And the pilots were getting on the plane. And I'll never forget, the one pilot looked back because Cason and I were standing close to the gate or boarding area because we were going to pre-board. And I swear the pilot gave me this look like, he's not getting on this plane, is he? I mean, you could just see.
And I returned the look and went, oh, yeah.
Yeah, like, and I was just like, because there's nothing we can do, And so as long, like I kept saying, Cason, once we get on the plane, which this is why we pre-board, so we get him on the plane, get his headphones to his phone, get his movie pulled up. And once he's there, he wants to sit by the window. He's in his little spot. Then he will calm down.
Yeah.
But I swear that the pilots were going, because he's an adult. That time he's big and he
full grown adult
calls. I mean, when he's yelling and screaming and saying this is stupid and things like that. And then on the return home flight, we had a little bit of a delay and we went to the Admirals Club to wait.
Yeah.
And
yes, I specifically have an Admirals Club membership for Cason.
So we go in and wait, and he was so mad and like threw his phone charger, and he's 19,
right.
19 or 20.
I think it was 20 when we did that one.
And Jackson's embarrassed. I'm embarrassed. He was hungry. It was just one thing after another. And again, I'm like, and we have to go get on a plane that's going to be 2 hours long. He's tired because he's out of his routine. He hasn't slept like he normally does at home. And I was just like praying, let's get on this plane. Let there be no issues. Let's get him his food now, get him situated. And he did fine.
He's fine once he gets there. And before we move on to our latest trip, that brings me to the second tip when you talk about pre-boarding. I'm sure that most people know that, when you buy the ticket or you use your miles or whatever it is, there is a little box you can check that says if you need to pre-board for whatever reason. So we always check that box. The airline, I'm not sure if this is FAA or airline standards, but generally speaking, they will allow one person to accompany Cason onto the plane.
Mm-hmm.
I guess this won't be an issue much anymore because Southwest has moved to assigned seating.
But we still pre-board on American and stuff.
Right. But what I would recommend is it doesn't hurt to ask. So there have been many times where you have gone on with Cason and I have waited with Jackson to get on the plane. But I always ask the gate agent, look, my son is pre-boarding. He's right here. He's got schizoaffected. He has schizophrenia. Just it wouldn't be a bad idea if you let us all board, if you'll allow that. And I'd say probably half the time they say, no, we can't allow that. And the other half of the time they're like, it's fine.
And sometimes I think it depends on how Cason is at that time.
Yeah,
like the Colorado one, they did let you get on with me because I think they can see he's amped up and they don't want an amped up person getting on the plane, I
mean, they do want to avoid these types of things. So I know that there are regulations, but we're trying to de-escalate the situation. So again, my advice is even if you've got pre-board status, if you have more than two people traveling, it never hurts to ask the gate agent if you can get on, because depending on their mood, depending on how things are going, there's probably a better than 50-50 chance they'll just go ahead and let you pre-board. And get settled in so you can avoid having an issue.
Right.
Okay, so that brings us to the climax of our Houston trip.
Right.
So we were traveling back on Memorial Day, and we had booked a 4:00 flight back from Houston.
Landing in Dallas at what, 4:55
or something like that. It's gonna be great, right? I mean, we're gonna be home, plenty of time to, get home and get dinner and power down in case it's gonna be a little bit better than normal.
Because Cason had MP responsibilities in the morning, and then I had to be up at like 5:30 that Tuesday because I was having my surgery. Yeah.
So it's all good timing.
Right.
So if we had booked a flight at 3, I don't think it would have been a problem.
Right.
Anything earlier than 4
would have been
fine, but we booked a 4 because we want to spend some more time with our family that we rarely get to see, right? So good on us. For those of you who live in Dallas, we had some weather activity in the Dallas area on Memorial Day, especially starting around 4:00. So the flight was initially delayed a half hour, 45 minutes, So when we weren't...
Yeah, first it started as 20-minute delay.
It started as 20 minutes. Yeah, it started as a 20-minute delay, then it bumped to 45. And we're not panicking because, you know, Cason doesn't know any better. And it's not forever, you know. He's got his phone. We're okay. Until his phone battery gets below 80%, then he starts to get paranoid, but we're okay. We even got to the point where, because we were going to push at 4:45, they started boarding the plane about 4:20, 4:25. So not much of a delay. We're okay. We pre-board.
And he's already a little worked up because of the little bit of a delay, but he was frustrated because the phone chargers weren't working. Their little things were already...
Well, and on the way down, we were on a newer plane that had the plug-ins that he could charge his phone.
But just little things were already annoying him. Yeah. I think part of it because it was a busy
We had traveled. He had been up late. He was out of schedule.
He didn't like just remotely being touched. Like if you're sitting next to him, I mean, he was already, you know, kind of hitting himself and stuff. So we're like, okay.
So we're on the plane.
Get on the plane.
And you know, we're looking at each other and we're like, okay, it's gonna be okay. He's watching something.
Right.
So
they push us back.
We actually pushed away from the gate.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm, you know, that's always a great sign. Yep. So you're like, okay, we're about to go. We probably went 100 feet.
Yeah.
And then we stopped. And
10 minutes, maybe?
15? Oh, I don't even think it was that long.
Really?
I mean, I think it was a couple minutes before they came on and said, yeah, look, we just heard back from the tower that they have shut down Love Field and DFW. And
weather,
no one's moving, and we don't know when the airport's going to reopen, and there is no timetable. So rather than just have you sit on the plane for some inordinate amount of time, we're going to pull back to the gate, and if you want to deplane, you can deplane. You'll just have to take your stuff with you because you can't get back on until we board again.
Right.
So he's settled.
He's settled, and they had said too, they would just pass out water and some pretzels
and stuff. So
we're like, okay.
He's already settled. He's watching a movie. We had fought through getting the internet set up. You know, we'd gotten all these things done. So we were like, okay, we're gonna hope that it's not too long of a delay. We're just gonna stay on the plane, and we'll see how this goes. Now, he had heard delay, and he got a little upset, but he was okay because he was watching a movie. He was fine. But we sat there a while, and then they made another announcement.
And that
announcement said, we have found out that the earliest we're going to get an update
7 o'clock.
Is 7 o'clock.
And it's 5.
Well, now Cason is losing it. He's starting to hit the seat in front of him, who someone's sitting in.
His tray table's down, and he's
screaming,
pounding on it,
pounding on things. So
he was like, he was like, I just want to be home. I just want to go home. And I'm trying to be like, Cason, look, there's nothing we can do. Look at all the people just sitting on the plane. Look, we have water. You have some pretzels. Let's just watch your movie. And that wasn't cutting it.
That wasn't cutting it. So I made a quick decision. I just stood up and I just looked at the people next to me, the people, you know, in the immediate rows around us. And I said, he's got some special needs. We're going to get off the plane. So I said, Cason, let's go find some pizza, which is a magic word.
Right.
But of course, again, we're going to go buy pizza in an airport. So I might as well go to a steakhouse. So you and Jackson stayed on the plane. So we didn't have to take all the stuff off. The one mistake we made, and it ended up not being a big deal, but the one mistake we made is that he left his phone on the plane.
Yeah.
Because I figured, well, I had checked and it said they were going to depart. It said 7:01. I know that we're making an assumption, but I thought, okay, we're going to have to walk off. We're going to have to go find something to eat. There's going to be a line that we'll have to wait a little bit in. We'll get it. We'll have to find a table. It's crowded. You know, it's going to take a while to pull.
Go to the bathroom with
Yeah. So we did find a pizza place. We bought, I think, 3 slices of pizza and 2 Cokes, and that was $100,000. And we sat down and we ate. And I'm watching my phone, time and stuff. And it took a while. You know, it got to be, when he finally finished eating and he was starting to ask questions about how much longer are we going to be here, I said, well, still says we're leaving at 7, and they generally board about 30 minutes before. And look at that. It's 6:25. So.
And didn't she say, though, back up a little bit, when you took him off the plane, wasn't he yelling the whole way?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Into the airport?
He was yelling the whole way about how stupid it was. And I was very calmly telling him, Cason, everyone on that plane wants to go home. This is not just you. We're all frustrated, but,
there's nothing we can do about
you
it.
need to stop and think about whether or not yelling is helping you out. Well, he hates to be stared at.
Right.
And he was so upset that he wasn't aware that people were staring at him. So I just very quickly said, by the way, people are staring at you because you're making a lot of noise.
Right.
And he was like, and so that kind of snapped him up. And he was like, sorry. And I'm like, okay, it's fine. Let's just go find something to eat. He was fine once he got down and he was able to eat pizza. Of course, the second the pizza was gone, he said, I wish I brought my phone. So I gave him my phone. But there was nothing to watch on my phone. So, luckily we ended up boarding about 5 minutes later. So he was able to get back on the plane and settle back in.
Because you got to pre-board again.
Because we got to pre-board again. And luckily, it did leave at 7.
No, it actually left at 7:45.
Well, we pulled away from the gate and we did sit on the tarmac a while. It actually, I think it was close to 8 before we actually took off.
Yeah.
And we landed at 9 and
had to get our
the
bags.
luggage. And by the time we got home, it was 10.
Right.
So it was, we lost 5 hours of time.
Right.
But
we can honestly say that was the first time we have ever been, quote, stuck on a plane with him.
Now, did you just jinx us?
No, because it just happened. Okay. But that had been kind of a big fear of ours.
Yeah, that was what we'd always been afraid.
And that's why, like, when we do fly, we get direct flights. We don't do any connecting flights because too much chaos. Like, we need to get on the plane, get him hooked up to his movie, get off the plane, and go to our destination.
If it's not a nonstop, there's a lot of risks.
Yeah.
The luggage could get lost. The
flight delay, missing your flight.
If we have to change planes, we might, if there's a delay over here, it might make us miss that leg. We're going to another plane. What if it has a mechanical issue?
It's just too much.
There's too many factors to take into consideration. So the risk management is always go nonstop, and that's the only option you take. And you check as little luggage as possible. Now, in our case, we never check medicine. Don't ever check your medicine.
No.
We never check medicine, so we're always prepared on that. Now, I guess, there's still a lot of things that could have gone wrong that didn't, because we traveled once and ended up having to spend the night in another city because of the weather delay and the mechanical delay.
But I mean, it's flying and traveling with a special needs child/adult.
Individual.
In person. Yeah, it is. It's not fun. It causes a huge amount of stress because Cason, a lot of them don't handle change. They don't handle the chaos. They don't handle the unpredictability of everything. He doesn't like...
It's just safe to say they don't handle it.
And Cason is the absolute worst. And again, on this trip, we had lowered his lithium again. And so he's already a little bit on edge. And, but it's always been our fear that we're going to be on a plane and we're not going to get off. Thank the Lord, this pilot said, we're going to go back to the gate. So if you want to get off, because if we had to have sat on that plane from 4:30, 4:45 or whatever to 8
without getting food,
we would have been kicked off the plane.
Well, I can tell you that I was thinking that through, just like I have to talk to TSA. I was prepared, or I would have been prepared. I've been prepared before to pull a flight attendant aside, explain the situation, and say, look, I know you've thrown people off planes for way less than what could happen.
Yeah.
I'm going to suggest that you ask the captain if maybe he wouldn't want to return to the gate.
To let us off.
To let people off, mainly us.
Yeah.
And deal with that and let us get back on or whatever.
Because this time when you took him off, we always try to sit close to the front because we can get off faster and stuff. So we were sitting close to the front. And once you guys got off, the people sitting around us knew there was something not normal with Cason.
This is actually pretty great.
And it was great. The man sitting in front of us, not the one that was where Cason was banging the seat, but another man, he said...
The one on the aisle?
The aisle. Yeah. And he goes, he turned around and he said, I was on the flight going down to Houston. He goes, I saw you guys on Friday and I saw your son. And he goes, you guys are doing a good job with him. And I said, thank you. And he goes, it's hard. And he goes, I'm a doctor. I delivered babies my whole career, and now I help people get pregnant. I'm only fertility. And he goes, but everybody wants kids and to have kids, but most people don't think about what if your child ends up having special needs.
Right.
And he goes, but just wanted to give you and your husband props because you handled the situation well. And he was pretty funny in the sense that he was like, I'm going to get off. And he goes, I think you need a beer after dealing with this. He goes, because I'm going to go get one. I wish I could bring you one back, jokingly. And I was like, haha. And then the flight attendant, she was like one of the main flight attendants, and she was in the front, and she came over and she goes, I was about to ask if there was something I can do to help you guys. She goes, but I'm glad he was able to get off. And then the lady you were sitting next to.
The woman I was sitting next to.
Yeah, her husband ended up getting off. But she was really sweet, and she said, I was about to ask you if you guys needed help. She goes, I taught special ed for 28 years. And she goes, and I recognized him when you guys got on when we walked on the plane. She goes, I could tell. And she goes, that's hard. She goes, but you guys managed it well. And then there were two pilots that were trying to get back to Dallas that were sitting,
heading back to get.
Yeah, they were like 3 rows behind, and they had gotten up to go talk to the captain and the flight attendants and stuff. And one of them, he was an older guy, probably the captain, and he was like, he goes, I heard your son, and he was like, that's a really hard situation you're in. He goes, but you guys are doing a good job. So everyone around us was positive. And I can honestly say that kind of surprised me because...
Well, we're usually prepared to, we've talked about it before, we're usually prepared to get some dirty looks, and, it's not necessarily anyone's going to say anything to us, but you can tell what they're thinking. And,
yeah. But they
prepare for it.
Everybody around us was supportive and understood and felt bad for us, and so Jackson and I sat on the plane and each had our own row because I think there are only 12 of us that stayed on the plane. Jackson and I were starving because we hadn't eaten dinner and stuff like that, but we made it home, and I'm not ready to fly with him anytime soon.
No.
And he's not ready to fly. I mean, if you mention that flight, and he gets aggravated, and he says that was so stupid.
Oh,
and
look.
He gets mad.
Next day, both Tuesday when I picked him up right at the end of the day, and Wednesday after the respite, both times the people who came out, they said, well, I heard you guys were on the plane going down to Houston. And I said, oh, did he tell you about that? And as he goes, stupid. He still remembers. We've talked about how we don't generally travel. It's hard for us to travel by ourselves because leaving Cason home is an issue. And it's hard for us to travel because traveling with Cason is an issue. So
it's not a vacation.
It's not a vacation. It's not a vacation. So
it's work.
I think that's, that brings me to the last tip, though I didn't have to do it. We talked earlier in episodes about how you have to advocate for your child when they're young, and you're talking about their education plans. And if you take them to a hospital, you have to be an advocate for them because you understand what they're dealing with more than the doctor or the nurse probably. Same thing when you're traveling. You have got to advocate for your child when you're dealing with security, even if you have to ask a flight attendant or to take to the pilot. Well, you might want to take this into consideration.
Yeah.
I'm warning you right now.
Yeah.
It's in the best interest of your family member, and honestly, in this case, it's in the best interest of your entire family that's there, because we have all seen, it's not uncommon at all on social media to see about people getting thrown off planes because of things they do that are pretty dumb. But there has certainly been plenty where you could tell there was a mental health issue.
Right.
And you don't want to be one of those.
No.
You don't want to be in that situation. So, because again, we talk about this all the time. It's not their fault. It's not your fault. You don't want to end up having some sort of criminal charges brought against you because of something that could have been avoided.
Right.
If you're willing to step up and do that.
Right.
So, things to remember here. TSA cares is the main one. The second is ask about pre-boarding. The worst they can say is no. And the last one is if you have to advocate.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to do it.
And what does help is having a letter from your
We've had to use that for a while, but it was helpful.
It's helpful. I mean, because if I had it with me on this last flight, and if there was an issue with them going back to the gate or something, I could have easily pulled that letter out and been like, this is from a psychiatrist, and these are his diagnoses, and this isn't going to go down well, and it's not just them thinking this kid's just a brat or spoiled parents or whatever.
Stupid parents, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you always travel with his guardianship papers and letter from his doctor, so those are just...
All right, so we're going to be back next week better than ever. We've fought and defeated cancer. We've defeated travel.
Now on to Social Security.
On to Social Security. Again, Social Security Redux coming up.
Yes.
So, again, hey, Google Biddy and Bose. If they're in your area, go get some coffee.
And go to YouTube and hit the subscribe button. The like
Give a
button.
comment. Like, follow. We love to hear from you. Leave comments.
Yeah.
And until next time, I'm Jeff.
And I'm Kim.
And this has been Specialness. Thank you.